So after leaving Ohio, the images actually went into a show that Kent State put together. There were the still images that I shot, and there was video as well. Another student had shot, and I did the audio. And all of the survivors, so the various students each shot, we all photographed different survivors, and they were all invited to come to Kent State to the auditorium for a showing. And Betty's was one of the featured videos, and she was thrilled. And that was really gratifying, is that when she shared with me, she said, "Amy, I felt like a movie star," and she felt like it had been accurate, and the photos were accurate, and they were fair. And for me, that was the best I could hope for, is that she felt like they were right, and that it was right by her. There was one image in particular that she said was her favorite, and it was also mine as well. And that was the image of Betty in her bedroom, where she's facing out the window, and there's a pair of shoes off to the right of Betty in her bedroom, where she's facing out the window, and there's a pair of shoes off to the right, and in the kind of far area of the frame is a telephone. It's actually an answering machine underneath the window, and Betty's looking out past the telephone. And that phone answering machine has her son Alan's last message on it. It was his last message before he took his own life, the message where he says goodbye to Betty and tells her that it's not her fault. She told me that on occasion she would play the message back just so that she could hear Alan's voice. And I always found that just to be so heart-wrenching to know that she did that. And at a certain point I offered, if she wanted, to make her a recording of it, because the machine that she had it on, it was back when there would be the digital answering machines, and Betty had one of those, and they were the kind that had the chip, where if the power went out, sometimes you could lose the message. The messages could be erased if the power went out. So she initially said she didn't need a recording, or what would she do with a recording, or how would a CD work. And then, as it turned out, the night before I was to leave to come back to Los Angeles, she changed her mind, and she said, "Amy, I want to do the tape. I think you're right. I think I'd like a recording. I've changed my mind." And so I did make a recording for her, and it was a very difficult night, but she was very grateful to have it. And I've never played the recording for anybody else. She told me to keep it, so I did, but it isn't something that I ever made public. It was something that I made for her. So afterward, Betty and I stayed in touch, and she was so supportive and encouraging she was very encouraging to me and my being in photography. And I remember she would say, "Amy, you're going to photograph a president, or you're going to photograph this or that." And she was always just like my biggest cheerleader. And it was really wonderful that we stayed in touch. She has since passed away. She died a few years ago, and that was a very hard day, needless to say. I'd actually gone to visit her, and on her way, she was going to come back from, she was flying back from a speaking engagement in Washington State. And somehow during the change of planes in Chicago, there was a storm, and she ended up having to spend the night at the airport. She fell very ill. She made it back to Ohio, but she ended up in the hospital, and I never saw her again. The day that I was supposed to go visit her, I believe she'd either been delayed or she was in the hospital. I can't remember the timing, but I never actually did see her again in person.